Okay.
Hey there, everybody. Happy Wednesday. So sorry, some technical difficulties, but my name is Trace George. I'm the events coordinator here at Holistiplan, and I'll be co-hosting with Debbie Taylor and Greg Schulteis here today. If this is your first webinar with us, you're in for a treat. Debbie is just amazing. You've been with us before. Welcome back. Before we get into it, I did want to mention that this session will be recorded, and yes, it'll be emailed out after the webinar. So please direct all your questions and comments into the Q&A, and we'll answer as we go. Anything that doesn't get answered in the webinar, we will answer in a follow-up email. Now, it is my great pleasure to introduce the amazing Debbie Taylor, or as we call her here at Hillspan, Queen Debbie. Debbie is the managing partner and chief tax strategist at Carson Wealth, in addition to managing her own wealth management practice in Franklin Lakes, New Jersey. She is a highly sought-after speaker and teacher in the industry. And we're also joined by Greg Schulteis, a senior wealth planner at Carson Wealth. And with that, Debbie, I'd love to hand it off to you.
Thank you, Tracy, for the kind words and that warm introduction. And I'm so excited. So, Tracy, this is my third year in working with Holistiplan. Can you even imagine?
Oh, it's amazing. How time flies.
That's exactly what I think. I'm like, how time flies, right? And so
Yeah.
I am so excited to be here today with our future clients, right? Future customers. So welcome, everybody. And this is probably the best webinar that you could sign up for, because this is truly transformational, what we're talking about today. Do you agree, Greg?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
This is going to, really supercharge, what is one of the most highly sought after services for clients. So excited to get into it. 3 years flies by, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does fly by. So let's start our screen sharing and let's hop in. The nice thing about working with Greg on these is that while we're presenting, I have my eye on the chat. And so if folks have questions, we're trying to answer as many of them in real time, which is cool, whether we're replying in the chat or just addressing it as we talk through things. And so transforming your tax planning in the new year. By the way, I have a question. So we have about 100 on right now, and folks are streaming in. And, I know a number of folks dial in afterwards and listen to the replay, because I do see those numbers. But I'm curious, with the 100 that we have so far, if you're future customers, are you doing tax planning? You're doing tax planning, but you haven't signed up for Holistiplan yet, or you're not even doing tax planning and you're just curious. Like, I'd love to hear from you, like where you're at on your journey, because to me, it's so much of being a financial advisor begins and ends with incorporating tax planning into your practice. And I'll give you a great example before we even hop in, is we are on a total high here today at Carson Wealth Franklin Lakes. We actually bought pizza and lunch for the group. Greg's all smiley, because we just heard today that we're closing a $17 million prospect, 17, okay? And we are closing that $17 million prospect primarily because of the tax planning services that we offer. Now, yes, did they fall in love with Greg and myself during the meeting yesterday? Yes, of course they did, right? And do we do a lot of other really cool things? Sure we do. But a lot of practices do some cool things, and a lot of practices put nice people in front of prospects. I will tell you, the difference maker is the tax planning, and how heavily it's integrated into our practice, and how we're proactive and how we're thoughtful in it, and not reactive and not episodic in how we do it. And so if you need any reason in 2025 to level up your practice, to sign up for Holistiplan, and to roll up your sleeves, I think I just gave you 17 million reasons to do that. What do you think about that, Greg?
I couldn't agree more. It was sweet music to our ears. And it was again, just talking through what we provide to this client. They absolutely fell in love with it, and we're excited.
Yeah, I love that. And so we did have somebody tell us a little bit about their journey in Q&A, and they mentioned that they use Right Capital and they just signed up for Holistiplan. And so I love that you're doing that. And this is literally going to change your practice and change 17 million other things about your practice. So with that, then let's hop in. So transforming your tax practice. So this next slide, this is me. Okay, let's hop into what are we going to talk about today? Is setting up your service calendar. This is cutting edge, what we have put together. It has been years in the making, and you are able to benefit from it. And you're not even a client of Holistiplan yet. Think about when you cross that threshold and get behind the curtain, all the great information, education that we're sharing. Leveraging the tax letter, which is really cool. And that's, Holistiplan exclusive. and then the tax report 2.0. And if you're not clients of Holistiplan yet, you might not even know what that is. So I'm really excited to share that with you. And then you need to stay to the very end, because I always keep bonus material at the very end. And we have some very cool bonus material piece for you at the very end. Back to the Q&A is just getting Holistiplan and trying to learn and figure out how to use best practices, etc. And so I love that, David, because that's what we're going to help you with here. And then make sure you sign up for the regular monthly webinars that are for current subscribers only. And the other thing you might want to do is on the website, and I think they just unveiled a new website, or they're about to, there's a whole section on my master classes with all different topics going back now over 2 years. So there's like really cool stuff out there. And David, if you're not able to get through all of that, and I understand, you might have a team in place, and maybe they are also helping out with going through some of these webinars and becoming like the Holistiplan champions in your firm. And then I have Lisa, do you prepare tax returns or just do planning? And so Lisa, I did prepare tax returns in a previous life, but I do not prepare tax returns anymore. What I have found is that generally speaking, a lot of tax prep has become somewhat commoditized. And I get that there might be folks that are doing that in our audience, and they're able to combine tax prep with tax planning in their practices. And I think that's great. But for us, we really focus on very advanced tax planning for our high net worth clients, families. We have about 110 or 120 high net worth families that we're serving here at Carson Wealth Franklin Lakes. So that's a little bit a background. So answering those Q&As. All right, Greg. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And so the next slide is just a little bit of background and a little bit of reminder. So if anybody out there is like, hey, why do I need to be doing tax planning? This might be a little bit extra work, which yes, it is. Although Holistiplan makes it really easy to do, a lot easier than years ago when I was doing it manually. So if we have anybody in the audience that was doing this manually, like I'd love to hear from you, because when tax season was over, I used to take the AICPA, a tax return checklist review. Greg, guess how many pages? Remember, it was put out by the AICPA. Guess how many pages? Yeah, guess how many pages it was?
It's got to be like, it's 600.
Well, it wasn't 600. I mean, we're reviewing a tax return, right? It wasn't 600 pages. But okay, I'm not. I mean, that's like, this is like Price is Right. You were way too over. I'm wondering if anybody else. I know. Let's just see. And you are going to get access to the recording. Yes, so don't worry about that. Okay, so any other guesses of how long that tax return review checklist was? So Greg, if you could check the Q&A on some of these, because it's a little easier for me. Do you see any in there? 50. I got 50 from Eric and 50 from Matt. It was like 30 pages. Okay. It was super long, super tedious, and literally you're going through each one, and there was no great way to organize it. And then you're trying to compare it to the tax return. It was a headache. And so what did that mean? It means you really didn't review tax returns in any thoughtful way. You didn't review tax returns en masse, because who has the capacity to do that? So how are you reviewing tax returns if you don't have Holistiplan? You're reviewing it for a client that specifically asked you to do it. And again, in reaction to maybe they're selling their business or they're getting a divorce, right? So it was very episodic and very reactive. And so when Holistiplan came out, I was like, this changes everything, because for the first time in literally almost 30 years, I do not have to manually sit there and flip through a tax return along with flipping through an AICPA document that is also, like 30 or 40 pages long, with all these little ins and outs of the tax return. So anyway, so back to this. So this survey reminds us that tax planning is the highest demanded service from prospects and clients. And what you see here is the trifecta. It's tax planning, it's retirement planning, and it's investment management. And so we know everybody's requesting investment management. I mean, they're doing it themselves. They're getting it on the highway at the local custodian on the highway, right? Financial planning, obviously have made some headroads into financial planning, and more planners are doing that. But a lot of clients still think, oh, I just need a plan, right? I just need it done once for me. So why do I have to continue paying you? Well, tax planning is day in and day out, month in, month out, constantly changing. Even if you put things together at the beginning of the year, it can change as the year progresses. The market goes up or down, certain opportunities present themselves, right? Think about that. And so tax planning is not a one and done. It's just the opposite. It is 365 days a year. It is ongoing. It is dynamic. So the fact that more and more clients want it, by the way, Greg, this is not a trick question. What types of clients want tax planning?
All kinds of clients. There's no end in sight, but
That's
particularly
right. Yep.
particularly retirees, people approaching retirement, maybe approaching that decumulation phase. They've spent their entire life saving, but you could also point to those who are saving,
And
to
here's the
maximize.
question: do they have a lot of money or a little money?
Oh, they have a lot of money.
Exactly. And we have 17 million ways to back up that response, right? All right, let's hop to the next slide. And so, most of us out there want to be growing our practices, right? And so this slide is from, I think this was one from Schwab. Oh no, this one's from Herbers also. And basically what this shows is that top growers are offering more services and they're offering tax planning. And so if you look at that green bar, those are your top growers. Look at all those additional services they're offering, and they're definitely offering tax planning. And if you look, interestingly enough, of these 10 services, 7 of the 10 have to do with tax planning, right? 7 of the 10. And again, what this is telling us is as we branch out from investment management and as we branch out from financial planning and try to show additional value to clients, so much of it is tied to tax planning, right? So much of it. So who are you? Are you that top grower? And if you are, then you better be offering tax planning, right? And you can't offer tax planning without Holistiplan. You just can't, because everything starts with the tax return. So the next slide, I call it the Mind the Gap slide. And the reason I call it the Mind the Gap slide is because what you see here is tax planning, and you see that wealthy investors, 89% of them want tax planning, right? And that's the number you see consistently. So the previous slide had about 90% wanting tax planning. This is actually a CEG slide. So it's actually a different company. They're saying the same thing. Their data is showing 89% wealthy investors want tax planning. So the data is clear no matter who's doing this poll. What to me is fascinating about this CEG study is that you only have 24.8% of wealthy investors saying that they're getting the tax planning, right? So what we have then is they all want it, right? 90% of them want it. And all these advisors say that they're offering it. We just saw that on the previous slide, right? 90% plus say that they're offering it. But what this slide tells us is that only 25% of the clients out there say that they're actually getting it. And what that means to me then is there's a little self-reporting bias. So when these folks are saying, we're asking them, hey, do you offer tax planning? Oh yeah, I offer tax planning. And that could amount to tax loss trading in December, which to me doesn't even count, right? Tax planning is a year-round activity, which is what we're about to get into. And so this is called Mind the Gap. And what you see here on the bottom then of that column is services provided by advisors to the investors. And again, the advisors are saying 85% of them are saying, hey, I'm offering this, right? 85%. But when you interview their clients, only 25% say they're getting it. That's the gap. And that's what we're looking to address, because one of two things are happening. Either these advisors are offering the services in the proper way, and they're not communicating it well, right? Or they're really not doing it. And I think most of it's the latter, right? I think most of them are not offering tax planning in a thoughtful, transparent, accountable way. And that's the whole point of today. So the next slide, setting up your annual service calendar. And so the slide after that, what is an annual service calendar? And an annual service calendar is basically your service promise. It's you in January or February, right? Setting out to your clients or sitting down with them, right? However you want to approach this, and basically saying, here is our promise to you. Here are the services that we can bring you throughout the year, or the services we will bring you. And a lot of it, again, depends on how you want to approach this. And in your service calendar, not every client is going to take advantage of every service. And so part of this is you deciding within your practice how you want to approach. But the idea is still you making a commitment to your clients saying, here is how we're going to help you this year. Here is our service calendar. Here are the services that are available. You may not need to take advantage of all of them each year, but here is how we're going to serve you this year. And so high level, that's the service calendar. And I will tell you, I refer to it as a desert island piece. Greg, do you know what a desert island piece is?
It's the pieces that you could not do without were you stranded on a desert island, and also providing financial planning services on that desert island.
Oh yeah, that right. Well,
you would, and if anyone could find a way to find excitement at that, it would be you.
So I love the fact that we're offering tax planning on a desert island. I love that. And so obviously we're going to be busy over there on the desert island. But that's the point of this, is this piece is so transformational that I guarantee that you will close millions of dollars of business if you use this right. Obviously, you need Holistiplan. You need to build out your tax planning. But this is the change maker. And so with that, then the next slide shows you a sample annual service calendar. And so this is not one size fits all, right? And this can be somewhat aspirational. So if you look at this and you're like, Debbie, like this is crazy. Look at all this stuff on there, right? I get it. I have been building this service calendar literally over the past 7 or 8 years. And so when I first started, it was very aspirational. And then every year we built out a little more and built out a little more. And now we have this service calendar that we're incredibly proud of. And so I'm not saying tomorrow you need to be doing all of this. What I'm saying is look at this and maybe decide, hey, I'm already doing a lot of this stuff. Great, that should go on your service calendar. And then there might be a few things that you see where you're like, well, I'm not doing it now, but I could do that. We just hired somebody or we're getting more efficient. And so then maybe you add those few things and voila, right? Voila, you have a service calendar. And then you could revisit it in June and you could add some things. Maybe you take 1 or 2 things off, right? So it is very much a work in process. But this is the service calendar that we send out in the beginning of the year to our clients. And this is the service calendar that we sit with prospects and talk with them about. Now, there's a couple ways you can build out your service calendar. We just did it on our own. I mean, we just sat down with a piece of paper, put some icons on a page. That's what we did. FP Pathfinder also has a version of a service calendar, a template that you could use. So a lot of ways that you could approach this, or your RIA could help you, right? Their marketing department. So a lot of ways that you could approach this. I think the important thing for the clients is that the substance is there, and you can make it pretty over time. So I wanted to highlight new additions to the calendar for 2025 because we never rest on our laurels now, do we? And so Greg's like, yeah, I know all about that. And so we added the circled items for this year. In the top right corner was an annual tax planning meeting, family retreat, charitable giving review. Now I'm going to tell you right now, all of our clients are not taking advantage of that, right? They're not like banging down our doors to have a family retreat. The idea here is that we put this on our service calendar, and then we decide internally who we want to specifically target with this because they've been asking about it or we think it could be helpful. And then we also send an announcement to those people saying, hey, we're offering this service as part of our service calendar. Let us know if this is something that you're interested in. So there's a lot of ways to skin this. But to be clear, we don't have all 110 families showing up for a family retreat, right? That's not how it works, but you're making yourself available. And families that might not be interested in it this year, maybe they log an idea in their head, and then maybe 3 years from now, they're like, hey, I see that you're offering family retreats. We're ready to do that. And that's part of your role, is to help these families and grow with them as their needs evolve. And so it was the top right-hand corner. And then I wanted to be clear about our tax planning and that it's year-round and not just year-end. So in the spring, we made sure we put sort of a mid-year review of tax strategies. We were doing that anyway, but I wanted to have a specific icon on that so clients knew we were doing it. And then during the summer, goal review and report card, we've tried to create these in the past. We did some brilliant work. We couldn't get it through compliance, full disclosure. But eMoney is coming out with some type of report card, goal review in the middle of the year. And so we're staying very close with them. We'll report back to you when they finally come out with it. And so we're really excited. So we put that onto the service calendar so that we could leverage that tool when it comes out from eMoney. So you see here, again, very dynamic. I'm adding things. I'm changing things along the way. It is a living, breathing document. So let's drill down a little bit into the different seasons. And the first one, of course, is winter, which is what we're in right now. So you could call this Q1. I decided not to call it Q1 for a couple of reasons. First of all, it sounds very jargony. Oh, Q1, first quarter, right? That's how we all think. Our clients don't necessarily think like that. If you say to your clients, what are you in the middle of? They're going to say, oh, it's winter. They're not going to say, oh, we're in Q1. Okay. Greg would say Q1. I would say Q1, but normal people say we're in winter. So I wanted to do that. The other thing is I wanted to make it somewhat fluid. And what I mean by that is Q1 ends on March 31st, and like we're all aware of that. But some of these services will bleed into other seasons, and there's some fluidity. And so I like the season concept because it's a little bit more fluid. So that's just the idea behind that. Okay, so winter season, that's what we're in right now. So what you see here then is we just showed you the service calendar that's all on one page. What we're showing you now is on the back of it. So where you see winter, we're going to take you through all 4 seasons. And this is on the back of the service calendar where all those icons are. The stuff at the top in the box is our description for the webinar, just so that you understand. All right, so what do we do then in winter, which is basically like, Q1, right? What do we do? So first of all, we are setting up the tax summary letter. And so we're going to share that with you. We have a whole section on that. Then we're also requesting from our clients their pay for the year, their income, their expenses, their cash flow, any bonuses. And so we do outreach around that and do some planning around that. We also are calculating our distribution planning. And so that's RMDs, how much money you're taking out, QCDs, right? And all of that works together, right? Good tax planning isn't like, oh, you're going to take $5,000 out of your account. Oh, let me just take that out of the taxable account and drive that down. No, good tax planning is saying, hey, this is a low tax year. Let me take that $5,000 a month out of that traditional IRA so we could drive that down because we're in the lowest tax bracket or one of the lowest tax brackets. And so that's good tax planning, is making sure all those things are integrated, QCDs, RMDs, and distributions. And so we put together those plans early on in the year. So Greg, I'm going to ask you, I know traditionally people think that Roth conversion should be done at the end of the year. Why does it make sense for us to set up some of these things in the winter season?
Right. Well, that's sort of the general rule of thumb when it comes to Roth conversions. In many ways, you hear, oh, you need to know the whole year of income. You need to know how much investment income there's going to be. You need to keep track of any changes in salary or bonuses. But by setting up a clear Roth conversion plan earlier in the year, you give yourself the opportunity to transact, to actually carry out that Roth conversion, maybe in favorable market conditions. So let's say the value of your IRAs is down 10%. Maybe you hold NVIDIA and that position is down 10% or 15% on a Monday morning, as we have just experienced. It gives you the opportunity, you at least have the framework of the plan for the year. To maybe, it doesn't have to be all of the conversion, but maybe just a portion of it. Let's take half of what we're thinking in terms of the plan for conversion, and take that opportunity while it's there, while that maybe underlying asset is a little depressed, so that when it finally does return, when the value, sort of regains that value, it's in the Roth account rather than in the traditional IRA account.
But Greg, the market doesn't go down.
Yeah, you'd think so, but it does. And that's, what, so the market generally, broadly does have down days. And that's, one reason I point out specifically, individual holdings, because maybe, overall your portfolio is up, and has been up the past 2 years, but there's certainly been cases of individual holdings or sectors that experience a lot of volatility and provide those opportunities.
I love that. I love that, Greg. So good. All right, let's hop into the spring season. And so in spring, we update everybody's financial plans with a one-page update, and we use eMoney for that. They do not have to ask, and we do not tie it to a meeting. We just do it on our own. We get it out to the clients, and then if they want a discussion around that, we're happy to have that. We also do estate planning reviews in the spring, so we reach out to clients on that. And then we perform that mid-year review of their tax strategies. That's tax loss trading, Roth conversions, right? Just sort of do this mid-year check-in on what we'd like to be doing, what makes sense to do. And then we have our surge meetings. And so what our surge meetings are is that by putting in the service calendar, what you're doing is stepping away from those quarterly dog and pony shows, is what I call them, because you're providing high value services then throughout the year. So the clients then don't feel the need to come in for their quarterly meeting, right? Because Greg is talking to them about their Roth conversions, about their distributions, having a tax planning meeting with them, right? They're constantly talking to us about all of these high value activities. So they're not sitting there on April 1st, like, when is my first quarter meeting? Having said that, we do have two surge meetings, bumper to bumper, a year. And they happen right after tax season because we're so busy in tax season helping our clients. And so it starts right after tax season, and then we do it year end. And so those are the more traditional meetings. But what a service calendar enables you to do is step away from those more traditional meetings because clients are seeing tremendous value in a lot of other ways. And so they're not feeling the need to force you into a meeting. Good. All right, let's go to summer. And so summer, then we continue with the financial plan updates because, we can't get them all done in like a month, right? So it sort of bleeds into the summer. We also review insurance policies during the summer season, legacy planning. We come back to Roth conversions, and then we do a security review, which we started last summer for the first time, and it met with great results. And so that's reviewing powers of attorney, beneficiaries, and there's, in case of emergency, making sure processes are in place. So a whole sort of security project review for our clients, which was really appreciated, and conversations around AI and senior fraud and things like that. So that's summer. Oh, and then the scorecards, like I mentioned, we're really excited to introduce the scorecards after many years of trying to get that through. And then in fall, this is, last call at the bar. So we've all been there. You've been there, you're having a great time. And then all of a sudden they're like, last call, the bar is closing in 10 minutes. And you're like, oh, like I got to run up then and get my 2 drinks. And so fall season is last call. We've been talking about this all year. We've been doing maybe some of it all year, like partial Roth conversions, right? But now this is it because tax planning is on a calendar year. And so it's now or never, right? It's now or never. The bar is closing. Go up and get your gin and tonic. By the way, Greg, what kind of drink do you like? What's your drink of choice?
When I do drink, if I'm going to enjoy it, I'll probably pick bourbon, or if I'm going the Scotch route, it's got to be expensive. That sounds very snooty. That's from someone who drinks very rarely.
Okay, I love that. I'm not a big drinker either, so I figured you might have a drink of choice. I'm not a big drinker either, but there was a time in my life where I did drink a little bit, and I do remember being there last call, and I do remember rushing up to the bar or sending somebody else up, and that's the same concept with the fall season. But here's the thing: we don't want to be rushing to the bar, right? We want to have been doing this work all year. And I'll give you a great example. Is we had a new client come on board in December with $4 or $5 million. He had called another firm before us and they said, no, we can't take you on, right? Because they were so last minute in the work that they were doing. Well, because we're doing our work all year, we had the capacity and we were able to take him on and actually do tax planning work for him, brand new client coming on in December. So that's the benefit of spreading this work out throughout the year with the service calendar. Also remember the other benefit is that not only are you now transparent with your clients and they know what to expect and they know what their money is buying for them, right? But it helps you with prospects and it helps with your team because now your team knows the services that they should be delivering, and they're not so reactive either, right? It allows you to sort of control the calendar, control the schedule, which is nice. So good. All right, let's hop into setting the stage. So these are the steps that you go through to create your service calendar. And so the first thing is step one is setting the stage. And so that's where you do some of this internal work or behind the scenes work to pull all this together. And so the first thing then is setting the stage, is figuring out what services you want to be talking about on your service calendar. And part of it then, like I said, is just start with what you're doing. You may be doing a lot of this already. And then look at some of what we're doing, and that could hopefully inspire you. And then from there, on a piece of paper, just write out what your services are going to be and choose what works. So that's setting the stage. Step two is preparing your analysis, right? And so part of this is having the processes in place so that you can deliver these services. And so the last thing we want to do is put a service calendar out there and then not have the processes in place. And so you want to have the checklist. Maybe you're building that into your CRM with some type of action plan, right? And so however you are creating processes in your office, but you want your processes. Step three is your client outreach. So now that behind the scenes, you've created your service calendar, now that you've created your process around that, now you need to communicate with your clients and figure out which clients you're actually communicating with. And so on the next slide, then we show you is the client outreach, right? Is figuring out who you're going to send this to. Is this going to go to all your clients? Maybe just your A clients, your A and B clients. And so figuring out what that client outreach looks like, possibly sending some type of announcement or email around this, explaining it. And so that's the idea then behind the outreach. And then step four is reviewing, finalizing, and following up. And so that is then actually performing the work and then following up and documenting, right? And so those are basically the 4 steps around your service calendar. Now, I know in a way I make that sound easier than it really is, because like I said, I've been working on this since 2016 or 2017, and it took me years to put it in place, but also nobody was around to teach me, right? Nobody was talking about a service calendar back then. You have the benefit of Holistiplan and a lot of the work we've done. And so now a lot of this has already been built for you and you're ready to go. And to be honest, if you join Holistiplan, which you should, then a lot of my materials are right there for you that you honestly can copy, and that will save you even more time. So there's lots of reasons why we want to step forward here. Good. All right. Next section is leveraging the tax letter, right? And so what the tax letter is reminding clients and their CPAs of the transactions that took place last year. All right. And the problem is that the tax preparers don't know. They're busy. They're overwhelmed. They might not even be doing the tax return. They might have some junior person doing it or some person in the Philippines. And your clients don't remember what they did. They don't remember that you did a Roth conversion. They don't remember that you did a QCD. They don't remember what their long-term care premium is or that it's deductible. So this is an opportunity for you to consolidate all of these tax transactions and get that to your client or get it to their tax preparer so that your client can get a tax return that's accurate and that reflects what went on in 2024. So we send these out in the middle to end of February because we're waiting for the 1099s to come in. So that's when these are sent out. And you see that this slide right here is the announcement. So this is us reaching out to our clients and reminding them as to when these 1099s are coming in, what the cycle looks like, and that they're going to be getting, a tax letter that's going to be helping them with their accountant. So again, going back to the 4-step process. So the first step is setting the stage, is generating the client list and segmenting the clients that will receive the client tax letter. Not everybody gets this. It's a lot of work. We have to manually pull it together. There's going to come a time, hopefully soon, where it's all integrated and we don't have to put so much work into this. But right now it is manual. We've got to go to a number of different places. And so we end up segmenting our clients and deciding who's going to get it. And also, and also for sending it to the CPA or not. This next slide, which is still step one, is tracking the tax letter using the tax letter staging tool. Listen to me, stool in Holistiplan. And so this is then we're able to track this in Holistiplan because one of the goals of Holistiplan is to do away with all the spreadsheets. And so they are building all these enterprise management tools to help make things easier and build it all into the software. I don't know, Greg, is this when you wanted to hop in and do some demoing?
I want to just highlight, we can hop into demoing. This is sort of like kicking off the demo. But I do want to just point out on the next page, really just an overview of what it is that we're looking for. And we'll touch on this a little bit once we get into the demo. But Debbie, I don't know if you wanted to speak to this slide at all before I hop over.
Sure. Thanks, Greg. Real quick on this is here are the things that we look for to include in the tax letter. And so Holistiplan has a template. Greg's going to show that to you. But part of it's on you to decide, hey, these are the transactions we're going to include. Now, you don't need to include all these transactions, right? So there might be certain things like long-term care insurance premiums. So you're like, Debbie, that's on them. I'm not about that. That's fine. But here's at least an idea of transactions that you may include that would affect the tax return. That would probably be helpful to them. And so with that, then, Greg?
Thank you, Debbie. And I should be sharing my Holistiplan households dashboard here. So for those of you who maybe, are not currently subscribers to Holistiplan, maybe you're seeing this for the first time. Sounds like some of you are already subscribers. So, you may be familiar with this or have seen it once or twice. I would point out that, joining the masterclass series that Debbie mentioned earlier, you'll see even more in-depth uses of this. But what we want to do is just give you a sense of what this process looks like, and really just walk you through, how you can create these tax letters across your client book. That's really the key here, is just being able to broadly provide this service to a large swath of clients, and do it efficiently, and do it, sort of in one place. Like Debbie was saying, it's not just, for running the analysis. It's not Holistiplan is not just for tracking or creating the tax letter. It's also for tracking the process. So I'll point to the tax letter staging screen, and I'll click into here. So we've segmented our clients. We know who we want to get the tax letter. Create our list here. So we know that all of these clients are going to be getting a tax letter for 2024. So again, no need to keep a spreadsheet on the side, that gets lost in a file system. Everyone on your team has access, to your Holistiplan environment. They can come in and see exactly where the status of that letter is, for instance. So maybe I prepare a tax letter and I say, Debbie, or maybe I don't even need to tell her that, because she knows that, for an hour a day, she goes in to review tax letters. And for instance, maybe Austin and Leela Accumulator, I've created their tax letter and it's ready for review. She can come in right here, no communication necessary. She sees this is ready for review. But I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit here. Let's show you what the actual tax letter looks like. So for instance, I'm going to start my letter for Professor Peter and Paula Professor, and I'll click into Start Letter. So again, I can edit my status here. So I'll change it back to not started, since I'm sort of starting this from the beginning. And you can see on the right side, the letter is actually being updated live. So as I come over to my editing screen over here, all of these various sections are available to include in the tax letter. So let's say this individual contributes to their HSA. Let's say that they have also given personal gifts above the annual exclusion amount. They gave to a donor advised fund, and they also performed a Roth conversion. Now, this is just for an example, but as I add those sections, what I can do first of all up here, I can add a line item to add any number of 1099, 1095, 1098 And again, you can get as granular as you'd like to be. Maybe you have this information, maybe you don't. So let's say, they had a 1099 B, and we can put a small description here. One thing I did want to point out is that you can also copy from the prior year. So that makes things a lot easier. If you know that no new accounts have opened, you copy it right there. Roth conversions, this is another one. Let's say we want to say that this is Peter's Roth conversion, and the amount is $50,000. Once I click that in, it shows up right in the tax letter. I can put the date here. For donor advised fund, again, I can just add it right to this screen here. So let's say we know we added to the donor advised fund, and we did $25,000. You may want to add a date as well, maybe if they had multiple contributions. So that's just to illustrate the point that as I'm adding all of this detail, it's showing up on my tax letter. From here, I can view and print. I can set the status as complete and print. And once this is generated, it generates a PDF that incorporates all of this information. Again, I'll come back to tax letter staging because now I'm in process on Peter and Paula Professor. So I will click as ready to review. Maybe Debbie comes back in. She knows to review this. Once it is reviewed, we can say reviewed or maybe complete not sent. And maybe another member of the team knows that once we get to this point, this is ready to be sent out. And we've sort of gone from top to bottom the entire process of generating the tax letter, tracking the status of it amongst team members, and just ensuring that by the time we're ready to finish up this process, you come back to this point, maybe set an end of season review to come back and make sure that every single one of the clients receives their tax letter.
All right. I love that, Greg. So should we go back to the deck with the steps real quick?
Yes.
Okay. So let's do this. So we send out this tax letter. Like I said, it's going to go out in a couple weeks. And it's very valuable for the clients to make sure that the tax return is accurate. And so here's step 3, which is the client communication. And we actually did a short video that we recorded on this as well. And so this is really helpful. And again, maybe it's not for all your clients, but it should certainly be for some of them, right, Greg?
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, maybe A/B clients, depending on how you segment your client list. But this is so invaluable, particularly because we feel it as a responsibility, really. As we're making these recommendations, these planning recommendations, it's really incumbent upon us to make sure that these are being accurately communicated to CPAs. So this is just another opportunity to do that, and to really just show value to your client.
Yeah, so I want to answer a few questions that have come in. So one of the questions is, when does the tax letter open up?
And I'll answer that live. The tax letter is actually always live. One thing that I'll just quickly pop back to my share screen here, and we've discussed this in the past, but and there are some firms that maybe do it this way, maybe some firms that don't. And it's certainly a good idea, but you can actually adjust the year for the tax letter that you're editing. So, maybe we're doing the 2024 tax letter right now. You can select the 2025 tax return. You could do this all throughout the year. So you're working with Patrick and Brittany Mahomes here to do a Roth conversion. Once it's done, come right in, add it to your tax letter. When you get to the end of the year, it's done. You just click print and send it off. So obviously there's probably things to add, but just want to point that out quickly. That's a great question, and
I love that, Greg.
Holistiplan's got a great solution.
Yeah, and that was actually the question: is can we populate this throughout the year? And the answer is yes. So every firm handles this differently. Some firms have spreadsheets. Some firms have coding in their CRMs. Some firms just go in and populate throughout the year. So there's a lot of ways to skin this. But the idea is really valuable. All right, so Greg, we got 15 minutes left and we have a whole other section. And so yes, we're going to review, finalize, and follow up. So let's get those tax letters then out the door, sometime mid to late February. And then, of course, making yourself available to the clients and their CPAs with any questions. Good. All right, I want to handle one or two questions before we hop into tax report 2.0. And so one of the suggestions was, why don't we have 529 plan distributions included in the tax letter? And I thought, hey, like that's interesting. So we do have 529 contributions included, but we didn't have distributions. And I'm like, okay, why don't we have distributions? Well, most of the time, the distributions are qualified, right? So there's really no tax issue around it. But sometimes the distributions are not qualified. And if they're not, then maybe it does belong on the tax letter. So I think that's a great idea. And here's the beautiful thing about running these webinars, Greg, is we get to learn from our listeners, right? So I think that's a great idea, and you should include that. The other thing is our practice is not so much younger clients, like families. Most of our clients are retirees. So there's certain things that we don't see as much in our practice, like 529 distributions, right? It's just not a big part of our practice. But I love that. That's great. There's a question about the Social Security tool. There's not a Social Security tool built into Holistiplan. So you can either use your accumulation software, that's eMoney, Money Guide Pro, Right Capital, or you can buy standalone Social Security software, which is what we do. Horse's Mouth has a great tool, and then Social Security Analyzer. And those tools all get very highly ranked on the Bob Veris survey. Then we had a question about surge meetings, 1 to 2 months a year. And so that's basically what we do, right? Our surge meetings are twice a year, and it starts in the middle of April and goes for about 2 months, and then also starts around the end of September, and then it goes through early December. We like to finish up early December and have things buttoned up so that when emergencies come in, we can handle that, right? And so our surge meeting calendar is about 2 to 2.5 months. And again, it's twice a year. That's how we run it. So I think that's what the question was about. And then the final question was actually interesting. So it looks to me like somebody's got a client turning 73. They want to try to defer their RMD to the next year, which you can do to April 1st of the next year, and then do a Roth conversion this year. And apparently the custodian is telling them no. All right. It is my understanding that they could do that, right? They could do a Roth conversion this year and do the RMD next year up until April 1st. Obviously the challenge then is if you're doing the Roth conversion this year and you're pushing out your RMD to next year, the next year you're going to have 2 RMDs in the same year. So what looks a little bit clever may not be so clever because next year you have 2 RMDs. So I don't know the entire situation. There might not be huge RMDs. I don't know what's going on. But my understanding is technically you should be allowed to do that. I guess the custodian's saying no. Greg, in the interest of time, I'm just curious, Greg, your understanding comports with my understanding? Is there something?
I saw that question as well, and I can't think of anything that would preclude you from doing a Roth conversion and deferring that RMD. So
yeah, so I don't know what's going on with the custodian.
A lot of the custodian's confused.
Yeah, and right. So that's it. Is that you see a lot of confusion from the custodians because they don't. Well, whatever. And then the second thing is their systems are not so great, right? Their technology. So a lot of times they're not doing things because they don't have the technology in place, or you're getting, bad advice. All right. So we've got 10 minutes left. We are handling questions as we go along, so we should be fine. We have another question. So is this software not applicable to CPAs who provide tax planning? You keep mentioning to send info to CPAs. No, by all means, if you're a CPA and you want to do tax planning, by all means, you should be using this software. By all means, but please don't misunderstand me. I'm just saying, a lot of folks on the call are financial advisors who have a client and the client has a separate tax preparer. But if I was still preparing tax returns, I would absolutely be using Holistiplan side by side with my traditional tax prep software. And like I said, I used to prepare tax returns. I have walked that walk. So yes, very much you can be using this. And I've worked with CPAs who are using Holistiplan. I teach classes at the AICPA, and when I mention Holistiplan, the chat blows up, and all the CPAs who have traditional practices want to learn about Holistiplan. All right, utilize the tax report 2.0. So Greg, this is on me. You're not demoing right now yet, right?
Not yet.
Okay. So tax report 2.0, really this is like the foundational product for Holistiplan, right? This is uploading the tax return, and literally 20 seconds later, you get the tax report, which is this really handy summary of the key information from the tax return. And it's client friendly, so you can send it off to clients. Your compliance department will approve this, and we send it off to clients. So that's the tax report. Sometimes I call it like the tax return report, because in my mind, like it's the tax return report, but Holistiplan calls it the tax report. Okay. And so here you see the first page of the tax report, and then this is like at the bottom of the first page. And you see that there's key figures on the top. Let's just go back here to the slide, back one slide. You see the key figures on the top there. So that's like your AGI, like your taxable income, like your key figures. And then you see the tax breakdown, which is very helpful because a lot of clients do not understand that there's actually like different tax approaches on your income, right? Like not all income is taxed the same. And look, heck, sometimes I even forget that, right? I'll see $300,000 of income, and I'll say, oh, like, why is the rate only, 10 or 12%? It's like, oh, because it was all capital gains, right? I mean, so like we even forget that, right? And so this is a nice, helpful like breakout, right? Greg's laughing. It's not that funny, Greg. All right. And then the next slide shows, again, all this is on like the first page or second page of the tax report, but it shows like the marginal tax rates, has nice little bar charts, the long-term capital gains tax brackets, right, which are different than ordinary income, and then also tax efficiency. And so you can move these boxes around on the tax report. You can even delete some of them. And so there's ways to customize this. All right, Greg, is this when you hop in?
Yep, we're gonna hop in. So let me jump back
we're
over to my share environment, and we're
going to show you firsthand what it looks like.
Exactly. So, and one thing I'll point out too is that, I would be shocked if anyone has a 2024 tax return to send to you, but Holistiplan is, I believe, accepting 2024 tax returns. So if you wanted to do a tax report on a 2024 tax return, now's the time. You can start. So you would upload your return. This is like so easy. The return gets uploaded. The software will scan it, and in a matter of minutes, you have all of this information at your fingertips. So what I'll do is I'll open up my tax report. I've got Karen and Eli Champagne here. And if I click their 2023 tax return, since we don't have their 24 return yet, I can jump into their tax report. And again, none of this was created by us, by me. This is all the software that does this automatically, just by uploading the tax return. So as Debbie mentioned, there's so many key figures up here, your AGI, whether or not you're taking the standard deduction or itemizing. And I was laughing earlier because I can't tell you how many times I've looked at a scenario analysis in Holistiplan and thought, wait a second, something must be wrong here. This is not calculating the tax correctly. So anyway, as an aside, the software is always right and I am always wrong. So anyway, breaking it down even further, this report just has so many charts, so many ways to visualize, the breakout of income. So this is showing what's tax on ordinary income as a part of the whole tax. What portion of the tax is attributable to long-term capital gains, net investment income tax. So, and one thing I'll point out too is that any of these graphs can be downloaded. So if you're sending an email to a client specifically about I don't know, maybe their net investment income or the interest that their savings account is generating, and you want to show them exactly what it means for them to be earning taxable interest, you could put this chart right into the body of your email. But just keeping on down the line here, again, just these visual representations. Where are you in your marginal bracket? How much ordinary income, how much tax is being attributed to that bracket? How close are you to the next bracket? Again, this is just another sort of bar chart representation of where their income falls in the tax brackets. So you can use all of this or you can use none of this. You can manage the sections up here to hide and show whatever section you do or do not want to include in your tax report. So maybe, you know what, there's a little too much going on here. I know that they, don't have any capital gain, so I'm going to hide Schedule D, for instance. But again, continuing on down the line here, Medicare premium surcharges. This is something that comes up a lot with our clients. Many of our clients are high earners, or maybe they're performing Roth conversions. So this is a big consideration. Again, we can see this perfectly displayed, very easy to understand. Schedule B income sources, which again, we like to call this our little outside assets cheat sheet, because if you don't recognize an account on this list, you see they're getting $22,000 of interest from TD Bank. Hey, maybe that's a couple $100,000 that you can say to Mr. and Mrs. Client. Why don't you think about investing that? 5% is great, but the market's returning 20. So let's talk about bringing that onto the platform. So again, there's a tax efficiency screen, taxable versus tax exempt interest, short-term versus long-term gains, in this case, losses, qualified versus non-qualified dividends. If they have any sort of trusts or trust income, Schedule C income is all displayed here. Again, this comes back to that net investment income tax. This shows you the actual calculation, which is very helpful for people. Shows you exactly how much is being taxed at that rate. So again, at the sake of sounding repetitive, there's just so much to draw from just simply uploading the tax return. These are all of your Magi planning considerations. So credits, child tax credit, American Opportunity credits. It shows you. I know we're marching.
All right. I love that you are so enthusiastic about this, but we have to end in 2 minutes. So let's hop to slide 42. Perfect. So in the actual deck, you're hysterical, Greg. In the actual deck, we have step-by-step how to handle 2.0. But what I want to show is at slide 42, summing up this section. Here is how we can use the tax report, right? So it's basically summarizing the tax return, and then we can use it in annual tax return reviews, right? Looking at Roth conversion recommendations, which was what Greg was referring to, asset gathering, that's the Schedule B that Greg was mentioning. That alone, the wallet share project, as we call it, that alone is worth you buying Holistiplan, right? Is having Schedule B, organizing that information right out of the report. And by the way, I was working with Roger, who is the founder of Holistiplan. He's creating an entire report around the Schedule B so that it's organized. You get special analysis and go after all of those outside assets. And so here's all these ways that you can use Tax Report 2.0, which is basically the summary of the tax return, which, by the way, tax returns are like 60 or 70 pages. So a summary is very helpful. Okay, in the last minute then, if we could go to bonus material real quick, Greg, wins and wows, right? Wins and wows. So we send these out. We just finished sending our last batch in the last week or two. And this is basically us reviewing for the client all the amazing things we did for them all year. This is super powerful. Our clients are paying us tens of thousands of dollars. And this is our reminder to them about how we helped them buy their Hamptons beach house. We talked to their mortgage broker. We sat with their son and talked with him about his illegal day trading that he's doing, right? Whatever's going on. And so we get a lot of feedback on the wins and wows. We also send this to our centers of influence so that if they've referred clients to us and they have a relationship where the client allows us to share, we also share this with our centers of influence who love the fact that we're doing all of this work. So our next slide is Holistiplan code, Debbie Taylor 2025 for 10% off. And so use this code, make 2025 your best year ever. And then the last slide is Fortune Favors the Bold. I have 2 questions that I want to follow up on. Is number one, somebody asked if Holistiplan can do 5 to 10 year analysis. Not so much yet. They are working on that. So stay tuned on that. And then I had somebody saying, hey, some of this feels a little bit overwhelming. Do you have baby steps? And the answer is yes. So if you're signing up, you sit in for the webinars, maybe you have junior people on your team help out with some of this and be the Holistiplan champion. And we break off little bits and pieces for you to use throughout the year. And then you just keep building and building. And so, hang in there. This is amazing. And with that, then back to Tracy.
Thank you so much, Debbie and Greg. That was amazing. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here today. Just to recap, we will be sending out the recording, the recap email, and the slides, so you have everything that Debbie went over. So ensure you keep an eye out. And with that, we will see you next time. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
folks.